Yes.
We got someone else. Let's put them in. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to Arts, Culture, Communities and Commoning by Stephen Pritchard and Stephanie Bolt, presented by the Bristol Artist-led Forum. Before we start, I'm going to run quickly through some general housekeeping. So everyone's camera are off upon joining, but please feel free to turn your cameras on. It would be good to see your faces. Also, we kindly ask you to mute yourself throughout the call. And we would like to let you know that we will be recording the event for documentation purposes. Also, we suggest you to activate the speaker's view on the top right menu of your Zoom interface. And also, there will be some dedicated time for questions after Stephen and Stephanie's presentation. So you are more than welcome to drop your questions in the chat box anytime. Um, this the time for this meeting is limited, so we will try to do our best to reply to as many questions as possible. But of course, just bear with us. And also, last thing, so we will leave the chat open for 15 minutes after the presentation end, in case you want to exchange contacts, copy links, and so on. However, if you click on your chat box, and if you go on the bottom right, you can see an icon with 3 dots. So if you click on that, you can actually save your chat directly on your computer. So in that way, it kind of saves you time to have to copy and paste all the links. Okay, so this was like the general housekeeping, and now we shall start. My name is Laura Bottin, and I'm here with Lisa Friedberg, hosting this event. We are the co-organizers of the Bristol Artist-led Forum, and from now on, you will see in your chat appearing some links, because throughout this conversation, we will add links to what we are talking about for you to look at after the presentation. So the Bristol Artist-led Forum explores ways to bring the Bristol independent artist community together, promoting ideas of collaboration, connectivity, diversity, community building, and well-being. We are focused in looking into ways in which artists can make change, open dialogues, shift stagnant paradigms, while sharing skills, resources, and ideas in order to support each other and our communities rather than to compete. Also, we are pleased to announce that we've been granted a research bursary from AN and the Airspace Gallery called the Peer Learning Group Bursary, Artists Make Change. And inspired by Frederick Laloux Reinventing Organization and Kate Raworth, Donut Economy, the Bristol Artist-led Forum will be interested in exploring ways for an artist network and really beyond to thrive based upon a new organizational and economical paradigms. And now I'm going to pass it to Lisa. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Laura. Yeah, so the Bristol Artist-led Forum is currently having an exhibition as part of the Center of Gravity, which is, an exhibition that's all of this month until the 1st of November. 60 plus artists have kind of taken over and been granted use of a disused building in Bristol and Old Market to explore their practice. And our collection of 8 artists who are showing directly in the space, but we're up to 22 in our network of already partners and collaborators are looking at artistic practice and social engagement. So we're all socially engaged artists looking at the cross section of the cultural sector and environmental issues, social justice issues, community building, cultural democracy. And so it's been this test space actually, as well as visual art in the space of workshops and talks, of which this webinar is one of 2 that we'll be hosting with Stephen and Stephanie Stephanie, talking about, yeah, cultural democracy and new economic models and kind of a critique from the cultural and artistic lens. And we're exploring in the space new ways to, yeah, work in a network, to engage, to collaborate, to work from a place of connection. So yeah, come visit, come see us, and yeah, it's a fantastic exhibition of all the artists involved.
And like us on Facebook as well. We're gonna put the link in a minute, so you can be up to date with all the events we are organizing.
The next one is also, sorry, on the 21st of this month, we have another webinar, and it's on our Facebook page with Stephen and Stephanie.
Yeah, I'm gonna share just with you guys now. Sorry, this is a little bit of a technical thing because I forgot this one. I'm gonna share with you quickly our Facebook page, and you can find all our events, all our information. If it comes up. Ha ha ha. Yes, there we go. And then we are ready to crack on. Give me a minute. There we go. Okay, so thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you. And now I'm glad to introduce you to our guest speakers, Stephanie Bolton and Stephen Pritchard, and their presentation called Arts, Culture, Community and Commoning, which is looking into ways in which art can help us thinking about and act upon ways of democratically take back control of our everyday life. This session will explore ways in which art and culture democracy can encourage communities to bring acts of hyperlocal commoning and alternative forms of collective education. And now, before I leave the place to Stephen and Stephanie, I'll just do like a super brief introduction about our guest speakers. Stephen Pritchard is an independent academic, researcher, community artist, activist, art historian, writer, curator, critical friend, and filmmaker. He is the co-organizer of the Movement for Cultural Democracy and co-founder of Field Community Art, Art Not Arms, Artists Against Social Cleansing, and the Socially Engaged and Participatory Arts Network. And Lisa is just putting now all the links if you want to have a look at Stephen's project. Stephanie Bolt is a senior external moderator at UAL, University of Arts London, researcher and filmmaker. She is currently collaborating with the Reynolds William Foundation and a cross-sector working group on developing a program called Meanwhile Wales, exploring a toolkit and a charter for generative uses of empty spaces. And during this call, she will tell us more about her current project. And also with the Welsh Co-op College Federation, Stephanie is developing ideas around the nomadic Pan-Welsh school, and she is the member of the Movement of Cultural Democracy. And now I'm gonna leave you to Stephen and Stephanie. Thank you.
Okay, hi. So yeah, hi, I'm Stephen. I'm gonna speak first for a little bit. It's a bit of a screen share thing. So I'll be talking and showing some examples of some work that I've been doing for the past 3 years in County Durham. And I'm now sharing, and we shall begin with a little introduction that was made by some participants, some community members. I'll explain more.
When Durham County Council first brought Category D in, we asked them what all these different categories meant, which was A, B, C, D, you see. And the explanation we got was, oh, it's just a means of identifying the different areas. And that was what we got. But in the following 6 years, things changed completely. It went from a normal area to people finding it impossible to sell their homes.
Yeah. Can anyone see that, or just hear the audio?
I'm just hearing the audio.
Okay, that's interesting. Not to worry. I'm gonna my screen sharing has stopped. Okay. Right, I shall try that one more time. Fabulous. Those moments when technical things happen. Where is my screen? There we are. Right. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that. You can probably see all this crap that's on my computer. Right.
Can't see anything, just see you.
I know. Yeah, it's not good, is it? My my PowerPoint presentation won't open. Not to worry. Okay, so what I'm going to do then instead, whilst I try and get my PowerPoint to work, is I shall talk because it doesn't really matter. So what I wanted to talk about today was about a project that I did that I've been working on for 3 years in Dean Valley, which is just southeast of Bishop Auckland, which is in County Durham. Bishop Auckland is a place that is undergoing significant investment by a multi-millionaire called Jonathan Ruffer, and he is investing in £300 million in the area. What that means is that the area itself is undergoing significant gentrification of a sort of rural type. This is causing problems within the town itself. But Dean Valley in Eldon is a small mining community that exists just outside of the village of the town, and it is a place that was subject to Category D restrictions, and I guess it's a shame that I can't really show you any pictures, but such is life. I'm going to give up on that and focus on talking instead, because I'm trying to do 2 things. So Dean Valley was a place that went under Category D regulations. The pit villages in County Durham were classified as Category D from not long after the Second World War. And what that meant was that the communities there, who were vibrant and thriving and very working class and working in very, very difficult conditions, were basically told that they were no longer viable. The project that I undertook was called More Than Viable, and essentially it focused on trying to see why people had stayed in this place, how long they basically were. There was no investment allowed on that place from the 1960s until from the 1950s until pretty much after the turn of the 21st century. That meant no businesses, no investment of any type. Everyone should have moved to the new towns, but they didn't. And so I was very interested in going there and seeing what was going on. And for me, what I found was that that people there, no one listened to what they did, and yet they had an immense sense of pride in what they do. And so as a community artist, I focused on walking the streets. I focused on going into the bar, there isn't any pubs. There's into the social club, into the shop, one shop that exists there, and just being there and talking and people people began to tell me about stories of the past and the present in the place that they lived, and it was apparent, very apparent, that they'd never been listened to, that no one had ever listened to them, and this was something, therefore, that became my primary objective. It always does as a community artist. That's the basis of my practice. It's about listening to people that no one listens to. It's about and it's about thinking in terms of what could be seen as cultural democracy, which is not just listening and not just telling stories on behalf of people, but actually doing what people want and working together cooperatively with people. And then, so there's a role there of, for me, it's about talking to people and finding out what they want to do, and then getting on and doing it. There's a question of that I'm often asked about whether or not it's art, and all the rest of it. But essentially, what happened there was people. There's an area there that's called the Hollow. There's many areas that were demolished as part of Category D, as part of this attempt to cleanse the area. And many of these streets, these old people, these homes, these places that were once people's homes, that people still remember there, were just knocked down flat, and the rubble left, and they still exist to this day. And I wondered whether or not we could take them back. You know, we could take back the land, that we could grow. These are on these sites of total destruction, on these sites of complete devastation of people's lives, of the landscape, whether or not the people, the children, the people who lived in them could take back that land. And there's this great symbolism and this great feeling of the fact that this place was called the Hollow, and it now is a piece of hollow land. And that my belief is that if you can sow new seeds in the places of the greatest destruction, then you can, with the community, they can rekindle themselves and rebuild themselves. And so all of what I tried to do was about listening and about helping people to do what they wanted to do, not what I wanted to do. So and this is crucial. This is my practice is very much about this. And they wanted to take back land. They weren't happy, and we ended up working with children. The children there set fire to homes. The children there create fly tip. They create rubbish. They create problems. And so I worked with them, and they themselves said, this place is a mess. And I said, what should we do? And they said, well, someone should tidy it up. And the parents and the grown-ups who were there and everyone said, that's the job of the council. And my question is, why? And so we worked in creative ways and workshops around this. And in the end, they decided that they would tidy it up. They began to tidy it up. Groups formed, we walked areas. They found areas that they themselves have been partly responsible for blighting. And we tidied it up. We dug it over. We pulled out lorryfuls of rubbish and cleaned it up. And then we planted flowers. We planted fruit trees. We planted native trees, hedges, all sorts. And then we made art around that. And people walked past and saw this small group of people doing these things and clapped and cheered and said, can we join in? And so they joined in. And it grew, and it became a really beautiful few pieces of land to begin with. And then COVID happened. And when I came back, because I've done work which I wanted to show you, but during the COVID lockdown, in public spaces as well, which is very important, I think, safely, but in public spaces, continuing the work. But when I first got back, I went to the Hollow, and we'd already began to take over some pieces of land, and lo and behold, the community themselves had taken over more. They had done the very thing that my hopes were, which was to not ask permission, to not wait, to not even involve me anymore, because I became the person they asked permission of, not the council, which was really weird and crazy. But it's this transitionary thing, and that they'd done it themselves. And I came back and saw that they'd done it themselves. We then, so then when we've gone on and more people have came out and tidied up the whole Hollow. We planted sunflowers, we've cleaned it, we've cleared the area. It's a huge piece of land. We're going to put 40 raised beds on it. Not my ideas, their ideas. They're going to manage it, not me. They're going to do it. They've got the soil. We're going to make it into an art project. Each one will be unique. It'll be open, right? And it will, and this is in an area where everything gets trashed normally, gets set fire to, right? But these people who would have done that are involved, and they would, and therefore they feel a sense of ownership, because it is theirs. It's theirs, and they've taken it off the council, who just left it as a derelict piece of demolished land. And those raised beds will be given free by the community to other members of the community to grow things and share the produce that's grown there. And so that's led them to become part of the Incredible Edible Network. So to grow, to then, instead of being insular, to begin to look outside, to begin to make connections with places in Salford, in London, and around in the Northeast and around the world, and share ideas and realize there's other people taking back land in other places too. And around this is this sense that, yes, some of it's art. I've created a huge mural during the summer, and we worked on cyanotypes, and we've worked on negatives of the past, negatives of the land at the Hollow, the houses that were there, the street parties that took place. Not only did we make a huge mural, which everyone loves, that's the first piece of real art that's gone into the community, but also they said, whilst doing these activities, why don't we have a street party? How do we do that? And I just said, just do it. And so they had a street party. And the street party, there was musicians, hundreds of people came to some of the workshops. People remembered the past, but began to talk about the future. They thought the children who had caused all this trouble and were responsible and seen as the bad guys are now mowing the ground and keeping it clean, right? Happily and proudly. They've been involved in learning everything from watercolors to filmmaking to audio work. And then we decided to bring in a circus, to bring in and set up high rigs and acrobatics, and there's large drones and people on stilts and fire eaters. And the kids said, who play with fire, said, whoa, we love this fire guy. Can we have a bit of that, please? And so next year I said, what would you like to learn? They were like, yeah. So then they want to learn how to control fire, to use it creatively instead of destructively. That's not my idea, that's theirs. That's their idea. Everything's their idea. Sometimes you put little seeds there, but it's their choice whether they do them. If they don't want to, that's cool. So they witnessed a Dada-esque, several days of Dada-esque circus and performative acts on the area called the Hollow. The idea of the performance was to symbolize its rebirth, to reinforce its rebirth, but also to push the creativity. Why? Because they wanted the carnivals back. They wanted the street carnivals back when they had the street party. They remembered the jazz bands. They remembered the floats, the people dressed up, the people riding horses, the drunkenness, the carnivalesque. And that's really important. That's gone. It's gone recently, along with their the buildings where they had the Amdrams and the music societies and the film. They had a cinema and the dance hall and the community centre and the Sure Start Centre and all the shops. Everything has gone. but they want to bring it back. And this is the beginning. So we've taken back land. We've reappropriated buildings, Quaker meeting houses. We've turned them into gardens. We've turned them into art, huge murals. We began to bring in performativity, and all of these things are there to try, on the one hand, to really boost the sense of commoning, to take back things, to take back common ownership. On the other, to build on the community spirit, and they've set up their own cafe, and I've helped them turn that into a community interest company. So all of these things are there to strengthen the economy, to bring people together, and to get rid of old gatekeepers. And to finish off, we've worked with people, I've paid people who are unemployed all the way through, who live in the village, to learn how to make films, to learn how to work with circus acts, to help them do the tech, right? So there's a sense of employability about this too, and that's really important, right? I don't want to be the one that's paid, right? They need to be paid. It's their ideas and they should be paid for them. Now the council listens to them. Before, and for the last 60 or 70 years, no one's listened to them. Why? And this is the problematic point that I wanted to leave you with, and maybe we can talk about. Why? Because an artist came. And initially, the council were happy to listen to an artist. And all I did was amplify the voices that had been ignored, downtrodden, and dismissed for 70 years. And all that, and I got the council to come there and made them listen to the people, not to me. And I was like, look, I'm not being some sort of conduit here, right? You must listen to them. And so through art, by holding a film night where I projected onto the side of buildings, this could be that, this could be a bike track, this could be an allotment. Suddenly, I'm using the techniques that could be seen as being art washing, but in a positive way. So I'm selling the community, but not that. Now I'm not making it up. I'm selling their work, their artwork, their films, their audio, their gardening, their cleaning up of their area, in their words, in a way that becomes art. And the interesting point is, and I want to leave you at this point, why is it palatable for these, for art, for something to be turned into art? Why is it okay for that then suddenly to have an effect? Why do we need to do that? Why don't the council, why don't people, don't they let people take back control, have more say in their communities now? Why did it take an art project for that to happen? And so I'd like to leave it at that. And sorry about the fact I couldn't show you any pictures. If you check out More Than Viable on Facebook, there's loads there and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephen. And just a quick one. I think we can definitely share your presentation because we will be sending a follow-up email. So we can just talk, you and I, via email, and maybe you can just give me the link and we will be able to share it with all our audience.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful, thanks, Stephen. Right, I'm going to talk briefly. I'm sitting in Cardiff, and I'm aware that most people whose names I recognise on the call are at the other side of the border to me. So I'm going to start with a short observation from the other side of the border. Over across the water in another country, and increasingly importantly under another arts council and government when it comes to culture, where freelancers here are seen to be part of the creative and cultural infrastructure, and more than, to quote Andy Burnham this afternoon, more than sacrificial lambs. I've seen, as many have on this call over the last 2 days, an incredible effusive outpouring. It's been like a Monty Python sketch, this kind of exploding, nipples exploding in delight across the sector under an enforced and co-opted appropriation of gratefulness, and many will know what I'm referring to. And that made me think about an essay that Raymond Williams wrote way back in 1979 about the Arts Council, and I quote, "The British state gets a surprisingly large amount of its public work. The House of Lords to the governors of the BBC, from royal commissions to consumers' councils, and from committees of inquiry to the Arts Council, done by these processes of outwork and administered co-option. When I described these processes and applied them to the Arts Council, I was told hilariously by the present vice chairman that I didn't understand participatory democracy, a phrase, by the way, which I seem to have invented in 1961 to describe something very different. The essence of democracy. And then, of course, this is the reality behind the state's attachment to these processes and to the procedures which control them, such as administered consensus by co-option. I'm going to show a short video now. Lisa, if you're okay to roll it. 3 minutes, and it's the last interview of Raymond Williams, directed by Bristol's Colin Thomas of the Radical History Society now. Thank you.
So many of the symbols of Englishness are concentrated in the southeast, like Oxbridge, of course.
Well, the southeast has always been the richest part of the island. I mean, for 2,000 years, it's been civil, settled, economically prosperous region, and so wealth developed here from a very early stage, and the ideas of the dominant class were embodied in institutions which tended to settle here and draw in people from the rest of the country. As a result, you get not only the concentration of physical capital, but of intellectual capital. But its major role still in the universities and similar institutions has been to establish a notion of Englishness which is that of the ruling group, rather than even of the rest of the English, let alone the other peoples of the island.
Why have the English been so successful, especially the southeastern English, been so successful in holding on to power, maintaining their domination of the economy, of culture, of everything really, inside the United Kingdom?
Well, the main cultural institutions were centred here in this triangle of Cambridge, Oxford, London. But more generally than that, political power was centralised in an unusually centralised state in London, and the money market. In political and financial terms, it's London. In cultural terms, there's this sort of backup of Oxford and Cambridge where people come here and are on their way to formations in London. You see them forming up here, sort of political, literary, theatrical formations, and they fly off to London like geese, you know, or honking away that they're swans. And they are, in one sense, in that they go in what is still a relatively automatic way into positions of power and disposal over resources, always with those signs of authority and competence which this cultural domination gives. The main effect of the accent was to make anything said in it sound more authoritative than just on its merits.
Thanks, Lisa. We got into discussion with Colin Thomas, who happened to establish the Taliesin Film Cooperative way back in the 70s and 80s. And Colin shared this with us, and we felt the honking to be particularly relevant at this precise moment. Cooperatives themselves are, of course, nothing new. They date back to radical grassroots activism in Toad Street, Rochdale in 1844 with the Rochdale Pioneers. I'm going to quote back to Williams again from an essay on Wales and England in 1983, and I quote, "Radical and communal Wales will be real to the extent that it develops in plan and practice new forms of cooperative work and communal socialism, new kinds of educational and cultural collectives, rather than what happens to the Labour or even the nationalist vote." Over the last few days, and for myself over the last few months, there's been an explosion here on this side of the border in issues around independence in ways which I don't remember in my own lifetime, with the First Minister now calling to account passage from areas of high COVID to low COVID. And that's going to lead to some quite interesting questions. But I want to kind of get into a bit more of a lighter note. Stephen was presenting at an incredible The World Transformed event on Arts and Utopia back in September. And the seasoned butler made a beautiful speech presentation, and she quoted David Graeber. And I just want to quote this in the context of the discussion tonight. And I quote, "The last 30 years have seen the construction of a vast bureaucratic apparatus for the creation and maintenance of hopelessness, a kind of giant machine that is designed first and foremost to destroy any sense of possible alternate futures." In Wales, colleagues in places like Blaenau Festiniog at Cwmni Bro, and I'll put that into the chat for Laura, I'm not going to ask her to type that bit, are no strangers to cooperative principles and processes, and have been quietly championing this other Preston model. They formed a pocket of resistance, it's how it's been described, during Wales's Communities First programme, and as a collective are really alert to the devices of hopelessness and have worked to keep alive that sense of possible alternate futures. So 2021 happens to be the centenary of the birth of Raymond Williams, and it felt right to mark this and to do so through an emergent movement linking with colleagues such as Cwmni Bro and across the wider Wales and into the borderlands. So back in February, Nick Mahoney and I, Nick's the co-chair of the Raymond Williams Foundation and also co-founder with Stephen of the Movement for Cultural Democracy, we set out a call to bring together cultural organisations and cultural workers with organisations and individuals who are volunteering in co-ops, who work in adult learning, broadcast academics, community development workers, people in social enterprise, charity sectors. And we met at the Wales's version of the WEA and then back online in April. And what we're starting to do is to co-create, working across sector, which leads to really interesting language and discussion. We're looking to co-create a platform where we can discuss these issues of inclusion, democratic efficacy, sustainability, and cultural and community resilience. And there's a strong sense that Williams's ideas have contemporary relevance, especially in this new context, where the status quo has been so shown to be wanting and societal norms are such in a state of flux. Williams's work has been such a valuable resource for many of us to help us collectively analyse this new context and plan for its aftermath in what we hope is a more inclusive, egalitarian and cross-sectorial way. But we have a strong sense that this needs to be made much more accessible. I find Williams's work exciting, but also deeply difficult at times to penetrate and sustain ideas through. And so how we work to to promote and involve others in this is going to be incredibly important. But at the same time, it's a balancing act between resisting the state's and other dominant institutions' tendency to mistrust, co-opt and colonize communities, referring back to what Stephen's referring to about making art matter and making voices matter through art after 70 years of not being listened to. But we too, and I know that Stephen's really concerned about this, must be very, very careful not to instrumentalize the process. Now, I would like to talk more, but I don't want to talk more because I'd be more interested in responding to questions that you may have. So Laura, if I end there and I can share these notes, and I think Stephen and I would be really welcoming of any questions that people listening have got to throw back at us. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. That was awesome. Thank you very much, Stephen, as well. It was really, 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 really rich. Thank you. So yeah, we were thinking, so because we were expecting more than 70 people in the call, we were thinking of having people writing their questions, but because it's actually manageable for us to look at all of you guys, if you want to switch on your cameras and if you want to raise your hands and we can actually open up a conversation if you would be interested in doing that, and we can just make it a bit more, yeah, a bit more real if you're happy with that. Are you okay with this, Stephanie, Stephen? Can we go that way? Sweet. Okay, is anyone's got a question they want to ask?
Or a response or reflection on.
Oh, yes.
Perhaps related to your own work. Anna?
Hello, thank you very much for that. It's fantastic. I look forward to seeing some images when, as well, when you get the, don't pull that face, it's fine. I guess I was wondering what, so I've been working as an independent with a very similar approach. Back in the kind of heyday in Southeast London with single regeneration budgets, we were able to do quite a lot of stuff with arts collectives and local community groups. But it's become increasingly difficult to sustain this kind of practice. Well, I found it difficult in Bristol. One of the main challenges has been working with the city council, or trying to work with the city council. So we kind of go a bit rogue often. But what advice, we've now got the city council talking about exactly what you've been talking about, how they want to take creative engagement approaches and do meanwhile stuff, but there's a lack of trust within many communities about whether the council will actually listen to people. So they're asking them to get involved in development plans. And yeah, the trust is so low, and I wonder what advice, or do either of you have advice? And the other thing I wanted to raise, was that Stephen, you mentioned that you got the young people and the communities paid, but you didn't want to be paid yourself. And I was wondering how you exist if you don't want to be paid. So sorry, I'll summarize, shall I? Because that was a lot. One, what advice would you give about the challenges of trust between local authorities and communities? And two, how do you sustain yourself as an artist?
So very briefly then, first of all, just to clear that up, I was paid, and so I was paid and I paid others. In other words, I held an entire budget for the project. In fact, several budgets over several phases, and paid myself, paid for the materials, paid other artists, and paid the community members. And I was in, so yeah, I hope it didn't come across that way, but I was paid properly to do that work. and that's how I sustain myself. However, so that means that I was commissioned, but the commission that I was lucky to have, and I am lucky to get as an artist, for whatever reason, is based on trust. And so the commissioners themselves, my work was funded by, in this case, the Great Place scheme. So it's Heritage Lottery and Arts Council England. And it went through Northern Heartlands, and Northern Heartlands basically commissioned me, basically let me decide the area, spend time in different areas, work with different people, come up with the project, and basically say, look, we're just going to go along with what the people want to do. So for them, it was a risk, but they trusted me. And so this comes on to your other point, and it is about trust. Very briefly, in the case, and this is always the case, there's a question here, and I often like to talk about, and it's important to think about, which is the differentiation between mistrust and distrust. And they are very, very different things. And so the council, generally, perhaps in Bristol, but certainly in the case of Dean Valley, mistrusted the community. In other words, they thought that the community couldn't be trusted, that they mistrusted the community, that they didn't listen, that they thought they knew best and they imposed their views. The community distrusts the council on firm factual basis that these lot tried to knock down all their homes, right? And they've never listened to them, and they've never invested in them. And that is a real distrust and something that can be evidenced. The mistrust of the council has no evidence. The evidence, if they bother to ask, they would find these people, that people everywhere have got loads of great ideas, but they never bother to ask. And even if they do ask, they never listen. And to finish off, that comes around to your point around, oh, they're involving people in planning. Too late. If there's a plan and it's presented, oh, would you like to be consulted or on this or draft version of a plan? That's too late. People need to be, if we talk as Steph does and Raymond Williams, and which is something I'm a great believer in participatory democracy, then you start off with an idea that we need to do something here and ask people what they want to do. You don't present them with something and ask them to come in and consult, because that leads to the question of who are the consultants and who is being consulted. And that immediately brings in a power dynamic which is unequal. So I hope that sort of answers.
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. So what in a particular instance, we've reached that there's reached the council did exactly that. They brought in a plan which knocked down people's homes. People aren't happy. They're now coming back saying, we're going to take this creative engagement approach, and yeah, it's in that situation, do you have any advice?
Sounds like art washing to me. And it's not to be trusted. They're using art as a Trojan horse to try and garner people's approval for a watered down scheme to basically try and do what they want to do anyway. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, sadly, yeah.
Anna, if I may add to that, Stephen, as well, that one of the things which we found with the Raymond Williams, this working party that's formed, which is 40 plus people from all of these different sectors, is the need for there to be, it's almost like going back to Raymond Williams and keywords. We all use language, and we need to really understand what we mean by language. Because when I first met Stephen, it was at an event at the World Transformed in Liverpool, where the Movement for Cultural Democracy were developing this manifesto through, really interactive discussions with all of the audience. The audience were all different walks of life, obviously with strong political alliances, but still. And the phrase cultural democracy now is being so co-opted and thrown back at us by so many different funders, planners, local authorities, etc. And it's just so incredibly important that we never assume that we understand the language that we're using. And our experience with the local authority here in Cardiff is a cooperative council. I'm not sure if the Bristol council is, but there are certain principles and values that should be applied into the process, but there's still fear. And it's often fear of being able to say, I mean, I'm an organic intellectual, so I know very little about what I'm talking about in academic terms. It comes from experience. And I think it's a really important thing in those discussions to just take time to make sure everyone understands the language. It's crucial. Otherwise, people can take offense and create division without actually having different points of view.
Thank you. That is really helpful. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Say Anna's one of our artists, part of the Bristol Artist-Led Forum. It's also, yeah, in the center of gravity space. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question, and I might throw somebody now, and they might not have their microphone available, but I don't know if I can see Mari is in the chat, and I don't know, and I hate to put you on the spot, if that's Mari McVicker. And I don't know if Mari can hear me. Is that Mari McVicker?
Hi, no.
It's another Mari.
No.
That's not a problem. I thought it was because Mari McVicker, Stephen has met, is just an incredible practitioner at the Welsh School of Architecture. Stephen and I met Mari at the Meanwhile mineral thing that we did in a temporary space in Cardiff. And I was just going to ask Mari to come in on that discussion because she works in an incredible way with planning and with urban designers and people across the city. But anyway, it's not Mari, so I'll leave it. Sorry, Mari, to put you on the spot.
Deb, did you have your hand up? Deb is another artist in our space.
Yeah, I mean, ideas about trust, you know, it's complicated and multi-layered, but the thing is that I kind of believe that, you know, when you went into that community, you acted as an inspirer and a motivator, and actually also giving confidence to take things on themselves. It's like getting the ball rolling, you know, and I think that's where artists are really brilliant. And so it's actually more a matter of the council trusting you as the motivator. And I think the trouble for the council is basically twofold. By their nature, they're institutionalized. And whether or not it's the council or a university or whatever the institution is, they're all minding their backs and watching their jobs, and they don't want to get into trouble. And so it's easier and safer for them to always say no. And it's much more difficult, whether it's the council, whoever it is, it's easier to say no than yes. And I've had loads of that happen. And it can take a long time to kind of worm your way in. And some people are very good at that. So this show we're involved in at the moment, there's a guy called John, and he's very good at worming his way in, but it takes time. And like, he's good at engendering confidence, but he's a kind of white man of a certain age that has quite a nice, calm voice. And he's got things about him, hasn't he, John, Lisa and Laura? You know, there's a sort of nice, plodding, consistent, not giving upness about him that is threatening but inspires confidence. And it, you know, all those things. So I have persuaded the council to do things. It's been a long road, and I've been bish-bashed about. I think with the climate that we're in, we have an opportunity to start doing more takeovers, but whether or not, like, actually getting the money, that's a whole other story. You know, if you offer to do things for nothing, I don't know, it's just hard. But I think it's difficult to make it such an issue of like, they don't trust and they don't, you know, there's lots of reasons for all of that. The thing is to try and sort of develop ways through, isn't it? And I think that's where we can try and help each other, is try to create a network of that can provide a confidence. And we are all networking more and more. We've got the social art network. I've just noticed one that I didn't even know about, connected to you, Stephen. If you don't mind, I'll make friends with you on Facebook, you know. And so it's just, I think it's about developing that and developing the ways and the means that we can help them to feel confident.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Basically, yeah, fully agree. You're right. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week as well, about mutual aid and things like that. We do need to organise a lot more, and that isn't just within the art field of arts. That's way beyond that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've put a link in to the chat, which is a thing called More Than Cheap Space, which was right in Cardiff, massive problems with developers, and also council not understanding the kind of the value of spaces that we talk about. We can talk about happily that they operate with. And so to cut through all of that and to actually be able to consolidate a sense of trust, MA students actually use an undercommons approach, which did the incredible piece, which kids and the value this space, which was like it's just like a shed in the middle of an area that's going to be knocked down and then rebuilt by a developer. And it's that kind of thing which is difficult and we have to do. And once we've done it, we share amongst ourselves, because other organizations, other artist groups can actually use this material, because it actually enables them to cut through that barrier, often with, especially with local authorities. So I think it's somewhere in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Marina, I'm gonna let you speak just in one second, because I've got a comment which is in the chat. So I think someone is not, they don't perhaps have access to a microphone. So if you don't mind, I'll just read loud their point. It was something when you were talking about trust. And it says, in our experience, and these people are People's Republic of Stockscroft, and they've been doing in the last 15 years beautiful work around all the Stockscroft area. Yeah, and they're saying, in our experience, that lack of trust is entirely unjustified too. If we make something they like, they are very happy to take credit for letting us, but also demonize us if what we do is too destructive to their plans. And that's from Benoit from PRSC. And they've been doing, all the time. That's all, all they do, which is like working with communities in the area. So that's their contribution to the conversation. Marina? Do you want to mute yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Amazing. Well done.
Yeah. No, this is really great to see all of you actually, because it's really inspiring. And I totally agree with some of the comments. Like Debbie, is it? I don't know. And also with Stephen, it's interesting what you were doing. Back 15 years ago, I was trying to actually put a plan, because there was a community center that was totally abandoned, if you want. So I did a lot of research, providing the cases why there should be an art center there, blah, blah, blah. And everything was fine, and had the okay from the council. And then suddenly one of the council was so against it. And it was so ridiculous, because in the end, they were asking for a website. We didn't have a website, because at that time we were just researching how to do this. But the other thing that I found was very difficult as a foreign, the place where I live is Fishpond, is very suburban, and it was like very difficult. There were some people that would get involved, but other people were like, "Ooh, who are you?" kind of thing. But above all, what was very difficult, it was the fact that in the end, I kind of seen the future in a sense. In the end, there were plans to sell to developer the place, you know. And what is really sad is actually areas like that that needs it the most, because you know it's suburban if you want, but it's got the same problematic that you would find in some city center, and that's why I went to the long extent and length to provide all the different, you know, statistic and all that, the stuff that you need. And it has such potential. Well, this place now has been destroyed, it's been sold to people that will develop, but it's been like that for about maybe last 3-4 years. Nothing has been done, so it's so sad. But I think what is great, you know, to see, and it would be very, very much my pleasure to be part of other groups like this, because I think that's what is needed. Is needed the strength to say, actually, no, there is a need. You know, there is something that we need to back each other up, sort of thing. So after that, I kind of gave up, and I thought, no, I'm not going to spend my life into this. I know it would be good, but it's so disheartening, you know. Yeah. So there's also this thing about buildings and what could be done, and very often there is this problem because politically and financially they're planning something else. This particular building actually was given to someone else eventually. I think it was this ex-policeman or something that was like gonna do some boxing, and I thought, great, better than nothing, you know. That's really great. But actually they used the guy, so eventually the guy spent a lot of money on the roof and, you know, really pulled himself like arms like that and did a lot of work, but no, you know, then he was taken, which is even worse in a way. So yeah, that's all I have to say. But it'd be great to form a group like that. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I would just say that's a really common story, and it's been going on for a very long time, and it's really, really sad. I mean, you know, there's so much of, as you say, not just in city centres, but in rural communities, in suburban communities, so much of the things that are part of our cultural lives, these are not necessarily seen as art. You know, but all of the things that happen in community centres, amateur dramatics, just meeting people, people writing poems, meeting artists, different things happening, that youth clubs, right? Reading groups, you name it, right? All these things, there's no way for people to do them anymore, and to destroy that destroys the heart of the community. And often they're selling these buildings off for like next to nothing, right? And then developers just put some crap houses on them, and it's gone forever. There's no investment in a replacement either. And I think it's those things that are really, really crucial. And you take away the aspiration of people, young people, old people, people who need it the most, not the ones who can get by, not the ones who go to art galleries and theatres, the ones who don't, right? The ones who, and that's so destructive. And it's no wonder that we're now in a situation where most people in this country feel so disconnected from what's classed as arts and culture that they don't want to support it. Why would they? You know, they don't understand artists. They've got the wrong impression, and it's not our fault, right? We're trying our best, but there's this sense that, oh yeah, it's like look at what's happening in Manchester, right, or in any big city. Or knock down and close all the community venues and build a massive new art centre, right? Let's spend hundreds of millions on it, right? Oh, it's gone over budget. Just give them more, right? That money's coming out of community budgets. That money's coming out of care homes. People are dying so that those rich people can have a lovely theatre to go to, and that some tourists will come along to. And it's stuff like that I as an artist will have nothing to do with, right? And I'll stand against it. And I think we all must come together and stand against this sort of thing. Meanwhile's not good enough. We need permanent, right? And we need permanent, proper investment at every level of our society. And we as artists, I believe my role for the rest of my life is to stand up and call these people out and demand change and demand common ownership back, because they took our land and our buildings and we want it back now.
It's so well said. It's like, yeah.
Sorry, I thought
Wow.
something else then.
Go ahead.
that was great. And it's also, I mean, I think this is also where, you know, I mean, I'm really excited by the prospect, potential of cooperatives. And of course, in Bristol, there's so many amazing co-ops. You've got Bristol Cable as well as, you know, the news and the Bristol Pound, which is kind of cooperative. And they're just so beautifully, quietly radical, and they just get on with it. And I think this is where the, you know, the company borough thing comes in. They're not waiting for government. They're not waiting for permission. They're not waiting for local authority. They're getting on with it. But the secret there is finding ways to build community wealth together so that they can do that. And then they actually are starting to create that new narrative. But yeah, it's that catch-22, isn't it? With waiting for permission and not needing permission. Yeah.
I totally
Yes.
agree.
Yes, Lisa.
Make a point about the arts sector and the kind of the DIY ethos that is just like inherent in everything we're doing, and it's like that crossover with exactly like community building and like people coming together, and the grassroots is such a perfect marriage, and the artist as advocate. When you your comment, Stephen, that's the phrase that came up. It's a really powerful position, and showing that you are so also trusted in your work as an artist. So it's kind of this weird edge, like the artists or creatives have perhaps a certain mystique in some way, and that there's a certain power, even though we're often undervalued. But yeah, maybe a new angle to utilize that and come together.
Can I ask Lisa? I'd like to ask Stephen the question to close, if that's okay.
Whoa.
Stephen, are you there? I can't see you.
Me?
Yeah, you. Yes, please. And I'm really curious about this one. In an ideal world, the young people that you've described, the young people who are now looking after those spaces, they don't need you, so you're now redundant.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's something that is inbuilt into my approach to every project that I do. I hate the word project, by the way, so I'm going to stop using it. Everything that I do with people, whatever it is this idea, and it's a crap term, but off the top of my head, I seek to make myself obsolete. I question why I'm needed in the first place, right? Because I don't believe in a fair and equitable, if we lived in a fair and equitable society, that much of the advocacy that I do should be needed. And I always go about my approach is always to empower and support people to be able to do it themselves, right? Literally to do it themselves. It's proper DIY stuff, right? And at the end of it, I shouldn't be needed at all, right? And they should be doing this themselves. And so I'm constantly looking at how far along that road are they, and trying all the time to say, no, what do you think? No, what do you want to do? No, don't ask me, right? And to become more and more and more their doer, right? When they need me and ask, and they can't do it themselves, then I'll say, right, okay, but I always involving other people, apprentices and stuff like that, so they're learning, or I'm paying them, so they're actually learning how to do it themselves. And I think that's got to be the case. I think we've got to give away quite a lot of our skills and our knowledge and experience. Do you know what I mean? And that's not, that's an integral part of the process. And it's really interesting how, for me, that's much more important than the end product sometimes, the artistic output, right? It's all important, but for me, really, the art is the vehicle for this change, this process of change to happen, this self-confidence building and self-reliance. And I think that's like crucial, Steph.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm a precariat, I very much like being made redundant. I think it's vital.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's always plenty of other places. There's always, you know, this is a long-term thing. Mm-hmm.
Lifetime.
Well, it's this has been amazing. We're running 15 minutes late, which perhaps we were foreseeing. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you very much, Stephanie and Stephen, to be here today. We're gonna see you next Wednesday, same place as in Zoom, same time, 7 to 8. I just posted in the chat the link to the Eventbrite if you wanna follow the conversation. And yeah, I just wanted in general say that the Bristol Artist-led Forum, and especially with this research grant we got, we are exactly committed into carrying on all these conversations and kind of see what, you know, how we can apply all this thinking in a practical way, which obviously is a big vision, but we need to start from somewhere, isn't it? So yeah, thank you very much for everyone to join us as well. And hopefully we're gonna see you next week. Lisa, would you like to say something?
Oh, just also thank you. I'm kind of interjecting here too. Thank you so much, everyone. And yes, Steve and Stephanie, really fascinating, and really look forward to continuing the conversation exactly next Wednesday, the 21st, where we talk about that crossover of mutual aid. That was actually for me the new phrase to everything, you know, and the connection with COVID and this kind of change paradigm shift that's happening about communities coming together from all sectors, and what does the cultural sector have to say to that? So I look forward to that, and thank you to all the participants and great questions and comments. Come visit us at Gravity.
Just a technical question. So we will be leaving the chat open for 15 minutes. I will send you anyway. Well, I saved the chat already, and I will send to all of you guys a follow-up email with all the content of the chat, with all the links, as well as Stephen's presentation, perhaps, if you're happy to share it with the group.
Yeah, I'll sort it out afterwards. Yeah, I'll
amazing. And with the recording of this session as well, in case you would like to listen to re-listen. Yeah, that's all from me. Super huge, massive gratitude. I feel really positive, and it's been really inspiring. So
thanks
thank
everyone.
you very much, and have a good night.
Yeah, I've got to go now. Unfortunately, my children need to go to bed.
Absolutely.
I'll catch you next week. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Bye, Lisa, Laura.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye bye.